Hi friends! My name is Isabel and I'm a second year music education major in bassist at Northwestern University. I'm making this video series to help teachers and students alike learn how to play and teach bass. If you're a string teacher, chances are you're either a string player by trade or you've taken some sort of string methods class in your training. Through your string methods course or another experience, you may have learned how to play bass, and you may be very good at bass, which is great. However, the skills and movements that you learn may not directly translate to teaching small children. Why is this? Take a moment and look at your hand. I'm a bassist, so my hand may be slightly larger than normal, but if you look at your hand and then go find your nearest third grader and look at their hand, you'll find a great difference in size and strength. So you can't really expect to teach small children the same way that you were taught because they don't have quite the same capacity with their hands. Even if you're teaching a student who's switching to bass from another instrument or who is starting on bass maybe in high school, I'd recommend employing some of these methods to help them play with as little stress and as little tension as possible. In this introductory video, I'm going to talk about some important equipment that will help your young players succeed from the very beginning. Chances are these are things that already required for your class: an instrument, bow, rosin, method book, but there are some modifications and special notes that I'd like to give you in order to make sure that this equipment works the best it possibly can for your students. But first of all, we can talk about the actual instrument itself. When you're teaching beginning bass, make sure that you talk to and work with a music store that will be able to provide half-size, maybe even quarter-size basses depending on how young the players you're starting are. It's going to be extremely hard for a child to play an instrument that is too big for them, and that's going to lead to a lot of stress and frustration, leading to either bad playing techniques or them quitting the instrument. In addition, make sure that these basses are set up for small hands to play. If you see that the strings are very far away from the fingerboard, then they're going to be very hard to press down, especially for small hands. So you want to either work with a store to have that remedied or find another instrument. Once you have the proper sized instruments and they're set up for your students to play as easily as possible, we move on to bows. The bass, unlike other string instruments, has two options for bows, the French style and the German style, which you can see here. French bow is held in a manner similar to all other string instruments, while the German bow is held in an underhand manner. Personally, I play French bow, which is what I recommend to small students. There are pros and cons to both kinds of bows, but German is a little bit harder to play if you have shorter arms, so for very small students it could be difficult. However, if your school already owns German bows, that's totally fine and you can work with that. In fact, I would even recommend German bow for students who are trying to play French but are having a lot of trouble with too much pressure between their index finger and thumb and can't figure out how to relax that. You can have them come back to French bow, but the thing with German bow is that there's a lot less pressure on those fingers. So if their hand is hurting and they're getting frustrated and that's leading to more tension, try having them play German bow for a little bit. I did it a while ago when I was having some wrist problems and it was definitely very helpful. The next item is rosin, which I feel is kind of misunderstood. I remember once a few days before an audition I lost my rosin, so I went to a music store to see if they had any, and what they showed me was this. Now, if this looks familiar, it's because this is what most beginning violin, viola, and cello rosin looks like. It's entirely hard. I can't dig my fingernail into it at all. And when you rub your bow on it, what basically comes off is a powder. So this rosin works just fine for the other string instruments because their strings are much thinner and thus vibrate much more easily than the bass. However, bass strings are very thick and require a lot of friction in order to move. So what you want to get is a very sticky rosin that will get enough friction on the bow hair that you can draw it across the string easily and make a nice, full, characteristic sound. What you're looking for in a chunk of bass rosin is that you should literally be able to dig your fingernail into it and leave a mark. It should be soft and pliable. If you leave it out on a counter or something in the summer, it will melt everywhere. But then when it comes out on the string, it's much thicker and more tacky than this, which really doesn't give bass bows enough of a grip at all. So if a kid comes in with this rosin, I'm not saying throw it out the window, but it's not going to be very useful to them. And last but not least, in order to make it easiest to play for small hands, you're going to have to modify some exercises in your method book. I'll talk about this more in my next video, but the basic idea is that for violins, violas, and cellos, it's pretty easy to press down the string near the scroll. However, this is the hardest place to press down the strings on all instruments. So when you get to bass, where the strings are very thick and already hard to press down, you really don't want to be starting a student in first position or half position, where it's really going to be hard for them to press down the string and get a good characteristic tone. Learning to play in this part of the bass first can teach kids from the beginning that in order to make a good sound they have to clench and use just a lot of tension and pressure, which is what you don't want in their playing. You want as little pressure as possible so they keep from getting injured, so they can keep going without getting fatigued, so you can build up those muscles slowly. I'll talk about this more in my next video, but basically what we're going to do is modify the lesson book so that we get kids playing where the neck meets the shoulder, where the string is easiest to press down. It's really not all that hard of a modification. I'll explain it all, don't worry. And if you're doing just open string exercises, say with very beginners, have the bassist play on the harmonic, not the full open string, as it's a lot easier to get a nice characteristic tone there. And otherwise, students may start developing bad habits with, pressing with their hand and tightening up in their shoulder. We just want to do as much as we possibly can to prevent kids from forming bad habits at the very beginning. I hope this video was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Bye!